Chapter 31. How Amadis and Don Galaor and Bela of Carsante arrived at the palace of King Lisuarte, and Galaor remained as the king's knight. Amadis, Galaor, and Belus continued their course till they reached the house of King Lisuarte, and so great was the general desire to see them that scarcely could they make their way through the thronged streets or enter the palace. They were soon disarmed, and when the two brethren were seen, how fair they were, and of what young years, all who beheld them cursed Archelaus for the heart he had to devise their deaths. Forthwith the king led them to Brisenda's chamber, and when Amadis passed the door and beheld Oriana, his heart leapt, and she who, albeit the tidings of his safety had reached her, still feared he was dead because of her exceeding love, and could not now refrain from tears, and lingering behind her mother to control their passionate feeling. But Amadis, taking his brother by the hand, knelt before Brisenda, and said, "Here, lady, is the knight whom you bade me seek." She answered, "And he is right welcome," and then embraced the brethren. "Madam," quoth Lisuarte, "you should divide them with me. As Amadis is your knight, give me Galaor for mine." She answered, "Never yet was so great a boon granted in Britain, but you deserve it, being the noblest of all her kings. What say you, Sir Galaor? Will you be the king's knight?" Galaor replied, "Methinks so great a king demandeth should be Methinks whatever so great a king demandeth should be granted. You have me here to obey you in this and every other respect, so far as it be with the will of my lord and brother Amadis, for I will do nothing against his command." "I am well pleased," quoth she, "that you will obey him, for he is mine. I beseech you, brother," then said Amadis, "to do what the queen desires." And Galaor then bade her dispose of him as she would. "My lord," quoth she, "I give you Don Galaor, and I beseech you love him as he deserves." The king then seated himself by Brisenda, and they talked with Galaor. Maliba, who was apart with Oriana and Olinda, because they three were the noblest damsels, seeing Amadis with Argives, called to her brother, and bade him bring that knight nearer, for they greatly desired to see him. They then came up, and she, knowing what remedies their hearts required, placed Argives beside Olinda, and Amadis by Oriana, and being herself in the middle, said, "Now I am between the four persons in the world whom I love best." When Amadis saw himself near his lady, his heart leapt. She welcomed him, and putting out her hands between the lace of her mantle, took his hands and pressed them as if she would have embraced him, and said, "My friend, what agony that traitor made me endure! Never was a woman in such danger, and certes never with such reason, for never had any one so great a loss as I should suffer in losing you. For as I am better beloved than all the others, so is it my good fortune to be beloved by him who excels all others." Amadis, who heard himself thus praised, could make no reply, for so beautiful did she appear that the words died upon his lips. But she, whose eyes were fixed upon him, said, "Dear friend, how should I not love you above all others? For all love and esteem you, and you love me. The reason is then that better than all the others I should love you." Lady, then," replied Amadis, "I beseech you rather pity the death which I daily endure for your sake. That which they told you had befallen me would be my consolation and rest, were it not for the strong desire my heart has to serve you, that heart that could not resist its sorrow, but would sink under them. Not that I fail to confess that one thought from you repays my pain, but something more is required, and without which it would soon bring me to my end." And then the tears started in his eyes. "Dear friend," said Oriana, "for God's sake, talk not of your death. It makes my heart sink, for I could not live an hour after you, and only desire to live for you. What you say I well believe, loving as much as you do, and let come what will, I promise you that if fortune offers us no means of rest, my weak courage shall find one, though the displeasure of my father and mother should follow, which would be more endurable than these fears and this suspense. Amadis could not answer, but he sighed from his heart. She took his hand. Friend, I will perform this promise. Meantime, do not quit the court. At this time the queen called to Amadis, and made him sit near Gaylor. The dames and damsels of the court meantime talked only of the two brethren, how God had made them as surpassing in beauty as in deeds of arms and all goodness. They thought Gaylor of the fairer complexion, but Amadis had crisp auburn locks, and more color in his face, and was larger limbed. When the tables were ready, Amadis and Gaylor were placed at one table by the king's command, with Galvanes, Lackland, and Argaves, and no others. And as these four knights had sate at the same board, so after did they partake of many the same dangers. And although Don Galvanes was akin to none of them except Argaves, yet Amadis and Gaylor always called him uncle, and he called them nephews, whereby his honor was afterwards greatly increased.